Yeah, here we go. All right, welcome, guys. 2 p.m. Good crew. Everybody's on time. I love this. It's my favorite hour of the week. Jackson kicking ass this last weekend. Man, Gerry, we had our virtual race. Emily, amazing results. And you know what? I enjoyed reading the athletes who didn't have the best days. You know why? That's why we do the practice race. So where's Deepak? Is Deepak on here yet? I'm going to bring Deepak on when he logs in. Your best friend there, Gerry. Gerry, how you doing? Say hi to everybody.
Good. I'm doing well. Well, you're always running the show. I just sit in the background and listen, buddy.
I call you the professor today with doing all that math over there. Yeah, amazing results. I just actually got done reading Meg B's little race report from the weekend. Meg, unmute. It's fresh off my mind. I just read it. Is Chun on here? Oh, Deepak's here too. I'll get him to him in a second. I just read your report. So we had our virtual race this last weekend, and I mean the notes coming in are just left. I can't get through all the notes, Gerry, but it's great. I mean the stuff that the athletes are learning just by doing these races is exactly why we do it. So I'm breaking down these notes with a fine-tooth comb. I think it's a fine-tooth comb. Isn't that what you say? But Meg B, tell the athlete, tell her while everybody's logging in, tell them about your experience.
It really hurt a lot. And I know that sounds super weird, but usually I'm pretty good at maintaining pace and riding within myself. And right at the beginning, I'm like, whoo-wee, this isn't going to be very pretty at all. And I'm like, okay, get to the old lady 20-minute mark or 30-minute mark. And then 50, then whatever. It was fine for a while, and then 50 minutes hit, and I really, really lost it because I got passed.
Okay, and so she you're bypassing everything that I wanted you to talk about, but so okay, go ahead, mute. I'll talk about you.
Thank you.
It was a mental struggle from her from the start.
That was my point.
So what she did is, like we talk about every single session, swimming, biking, running, she broke it down into little chunks and took it one chunk at a time, and she PR'd her 40K by 25 minutes, whatever it was. She PR'd big time, but the entire way was a struggle, and she still had a big PR. But she applied everything we work on every single session. Chun did the Chunster, like I call him, did the same exact thing. Pam, same thing. Leslie, unmute. We have our 70.3 finisher. Leslie, let's unmute you. Let's see if I could do that here. There we go. So Leslie, second place in her division at Florida 70.3 this last weekend. Congratulations. Awesome work. Major perseverance. It was a rough day out there. They're all rough, but this, Gerry, the humidity and heat in Florida. Go ahead, Leslie. Tell us about it.
The humidity and the heat?
Tell us about just horrible. The day. Tell about your day.
Oh, the day. So well, actually, the swim was an M. So there was a lot of sighting involved, and it wasn't wetsuit legal for the first time ever. So that made it a little challenging there because there were a lot of people who probably hadn't been swimming much, and I discovered that. So it was more like a rugby scrum. So I'd get stuck in a scrum. And this is where I was really happy because I was much stronger this year. I could get out of the scrums and I'd get on somebody's feet and then we'd catch up to the next scrum. So it kind of kept going like that the whole time. I wasn't happy with my time, but I was really happy that I had a strong swim, and I actually sighted very well too. Because I said there were this, hey, stop. There were quite a few sightings. Is when you're going down the M, there was a right turn. There was quite a few right turns. I got out of the swim. I felt great actually when I got out of the swim, but it was a half-mile run. Little did I know it, I had stepped on something and it had gotten in my toe and I had bruised my heel, but I didn't know at that point because I just a second. Get.
Gerry, you're no stranger to the M course, huh? Did you develop the Florida 70.3 course?
No consultation here for that.
Man, it was crazy. But that long run, that half-mile run, because they had to make the transition so big, and it was running, and it's not the normal asphalt that I'm used to, it's this chippy stuff. So, but my adrenaline was so high, I didn't even notice at that point. And I got on the bike, and I had the best bike. I was just so happy on my bike. And it wasn't flat, by the way. There were hills. And I remember what Coach Emily said last week, you know, when you hit a hill or you get into the wind, just, you know, go 3% harder. And so I kept doing that, and I kept focusing on just that, and focusing on my, you know, relaxing on my hips, on my pushing down with my heels, you know, everything that we do every week. And I usually want to get off the bike. I didn't want to get off the bike. I was having such a good race. Except the last 6 miles, but everybody had a problem with that. It's where you hit chippy road into 15-mile-an-hour winds. But, you know, anyway, then the run. So I started on the run, and I felt really good. I ran really well off the bike. But after about 2 miles in, I was like, wow, this is a killer. And on top of that, there were 2 really long hills at the beginning of the run, which you had to do twice because it was 2 loops. So my run that started out as a run to every aid station turned into a run walk. But on the positive side, when I would run, I was not shuffling, I was running well. It's just I couldn't continue because I was so hot, as was everybody else. I mean, they had so many DNFs that day. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it was a major, you were persevering the whole day. You were applying what you practiced every single session, and it was evident because you were just flying through the course. And when the going got tough, you knew where your mind should go. You broke it down in the smaller chunks like we just spoke about, and you kept moving. And I mean, what was the third place, like an hour behind you or something like that? So
something like that.
It was amazing.
And usually the woman who beat me, we always are, you know, we always go back and forth. She beat me by more than usual this time, but it was okay. You know, it was my first race. Yeah, I was really, really, real happy.
Well, yeah, a lot of people at home pushing you along and sending good vibes your way. So congratulations, amazing work, and just bringing home hardware. That's what it's all about, right?
Yep, that's right.
There you go. Cool. So, all right. Congratulations, George, 5th overall over across the pond in his duathlon. And then we had all of our successes on our virtual race day. But let's get to Coach Emily. Coach Emily, let's unmute you. Last week, why don't you remind everybody what we were talking about last week and what you offered up this week, and the expert that we have on to fill us in on all of our questions that we didn't get answered with our gut issues we were talking about last week.
Yeah. So last week, Coach O'Driscoll had asked a question about his athlete who often has to go after he starts a run. And then it turned into Rach started talking about low residue diets and FODMAPs and gut health kind of pre-race and during a race. So I thought back into my coaching history, and I had an athlete way back in 2014 who worked with a dietitian named Dr. Liz Broad, and had a diet plan leading into a race to help her with her gut issues. So I contacted Dr. Broad, and she is on with us, and she's going to talk a little bit about that kind of thing and answer any questions that you guys have. So if you can type into the chat while she's talking, if something comes across your mind you want to ask, please do so. Just a little bit about Dr. Broad. She is a master's PhD in, I think applied, she'll tell you for sure, but she has her master's and her PhD. She's worked on several Olympics, gone to the Olympic Games with Paralympians in the United States and Australia, has worked with all different sports. Her husband also is Darren Smith, who is a high-level triathlon coach. So she's worked with athletes like Lisa Norden, Sarah True, Annie Haug, Daniela Reef. My friend Matt Charbat, I know, did some stuff. I know he did the low residue diet way back when he was racing. So She has had lots of research and experience with endurance athletes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Broad and let her tell you more.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks everyone for inviting me on, and hope you're all having a good day. I hear there's, well, I think it's good news out of Minneapolis, so yeah, we're all hearing about it today. It's all plastered over the news down here. Anyway, so yeah, Emily asked me to just talk to you a little bit about gut issues in relationship to not only competition, but also training, because a lot of people will get these gut issues during training as well. And that's going to be a clear sign that there's things that you probably need to look at. There can be a number of different reasons why you get gut issues, particularly in more of the ultra endurance types of events. And that can be related to the fueling that you do during an event. It can be related to hydration, and just hearing about the event in Florida, certainly dehydration will exacerbate any issues because it reduces the blood flow to the gut being a non-essential organ when you're actually exercising. And then there's overfueling and overhydration. So, you know, too much of a good thing can be just as bad as not enough. Caffeine, which is a gastric irritant, using non-steroidal anti-inflammatories beforehand, that can also cause some havoc with your gut. And then there's sensitivities. So some people can be sensitive to certain foods, and they may not notice it as much during day-to-day life, but usually they'll get some symptoms during day-to-day life, and that's the FODMAP side of things. So the FODMAPs, I don't know how much detail you went into last week, is about fermentable forms of carbohydrate that can, they're fermentable in everybody, but not everyone's sensitive to that fermentation kind of aspect. And so some people can be more sensitive and get more symptoms like bloating, diarrhea, and those sorts of things. And some of them are fairly obvious, like lactose, but then some of them aren't very obvious and may be more an accumulation of multiple doses of high FODMAP foods. So I think, you know, the different effects that you get, sometimes you can look at, you know, so, you know, some people just get burping, bloating, some people get frank diarrhea. So you get and you know, obviously vomiting as well. So there's the full spectrum of gastrointestinal issues that you may get as a result of that. And sometimes you can work out what the cause is based on the symptoms that you get. But it needs really a sort of an experienced dietitian who can actually do some investigation with you to work out what the actual sort of problem is. For me, the low residue or low fiber diet is something, if you really, your main symptom is just urge to defecate, then really that's about trying to clear your lower intestinal tract, so your bowels, from having anything in it that you need to pass. And that's what the low fiber diet or the low residue diet is about. So it's about reducing the waste products that you need to you know, get rid of. So having that for 2 or 3 days, having a low fiber or low residue diet for 2 or 3 days prior to a race is generally very effective at basically clearing out the gut. And that means that the urge to defecate, if that's your primary symptom, is going to usually be pretty well resolved with that. It's not an easy diet for most triathletes because it takes away most of the things that they put in terms of lots of fruits and vegetables and higher fiber foods. So it can make you feel a little hungry because you're lacking that fiber that usually gives you a sense of fullness. And it's just it can do your head in if you're not used to it. You know, if you're used to putting a lot of fruit and vegetables on your plate and all of a sudden you don't do that, a lot of athletes are like, or this isn't right. But it's just a short-term thing that you would do for very specific races that are really important, where you just don't want to have to, spend the time having to find somewhere to go to the bathroom, basically. So, I think there's purposes behind every manipulation that you do. And I think that's, it partly depends on what symptoms and the severity of the symptoms that you're getting as to how you might go about working out what to change in your diet leading up to a race, or even on a day-to-day basis.
So what is the what does a typical meal look like if you're on the diet?
When you're on the low fiber diet, it's for example, for breakfast, it might be white toast, or it might, instead of having oats, rolled oats, you might end up having something like Rice Krispies. So you end up with a lower fiber kind of version. You can still have things like eggs. So if you normally have eggs on toast, it's just changing to white toast instead of whole wheat. If it's, you could still have something like a smoothie, but you probably wouldn't put berries and a lot of fruit in it. So you'd be taking out a lot of the fruit component for a smoothie. So and you can still have something like yogurt, but again, you'd probably either reduce substantially or take out the fruit that would go with the yogurt. So, the protein component of your diet doesn't really change. And if anything, some people will actually increase that a little bit just because of the satiety factor and the fact that they get hungrier. Lunchtime, again, you could have something like a sandwich, but you'd be using white bread and you'd take the salad out. Snacks are more of an issue because you can't do things like dried fruit and like trail mix, because both nuts and dried fruit are going to be fairly high in fiber. So it's finding snack options that are fairly low in fiber. So it becomes, I guess you have to kind of think a little bit more creatively around that. And then dinner would be, you could have something like, what a lot of my husband's athletes used to do on the night before a race, surprisingly, would be have a pizza. So without the veggies and just with a little bit of like some cheese and maybe some chicken or something like that on a pizza, because the pizza base is generally mostly a white base, and then you just remove the vegetables from it. So you could have something like a pasta dish, but again, if you normally have something like a bolognese or a Napolitana, the tomato base to that, you have to kind of take that out because of the fiber content. So that's where you need to kind of think around, okay, how do we modify this so that we can reduce the fiber content? So you wouldn't be able to use things like onions, for example, because of their fiber content. You can still have a little bit of vegetables like squash and mushrooms, because they're a higher water content vegetable, and for the volume that you'd eat, a lower fiber proportionally. But things like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and stuff like that are not ones that you'd probably include on the low fiber.
Is this something that you would recommend most of our athletes do race week leading into a race, or only if you have an issue when you hit the course with finding a porta potty?
I think it's really if you have an issue, like if your digestive system is pretty normally robust and you have a very regular system and you can pass a bowel motion in the morning of a race really easily and you don't ever have any problems with the urge to defecate, I don't think you need to change anything. I really think it's, and that's what we try and do pre-race. We try not to change anything, but it's something that I think is worthwhile looking at if you have, if you have difficulties in that area. And sometimes it's sporadic difficulties in that sometimes you're okay and sometimes it's not, but you're like, well, but I don't know if it's going to be one of those days. The thing that you need to do is you need to practice it a few times in training so that you know what it feels like. You know how long you need it for, because some people only need it for 2 days and they're pretty good. Some people may need it for 3. To know how that hunger sort of feels, but also that fact that you're after day 2, you shouldn't be passing a bowel motion, and so then you get people who it does their head in because they think they're constipated. But the whole point is there's nothing to pass. So it's getting around that psychological barrier of, I don't need to go to the bathroom because there isn't anything there to go with, and that's okay. Then once you, and also on the flip side, when you go back to your normal diet, how do you build back up to that? Do you go straight in and eat normal food and have a massive salad as soon as you finish the race? Not that anyone feels like a massive salad when they first finish a big race, but the putting back in of the fiber content, do you take that slowly or do you just go full on? So I think, practicing and training at least a couple of times before you try it in a race will give you a sense of what is that doing for you, and what is the benefits in terms of your gut benefits versus the risk in terms of how you've got to change your mindset around how that diet is and how you feel in terms of hunger and those sorts of things leading into a race.
Do you find when you have an athlete following this that, and Pam asked this question as the next thing on my mind, they have to up their hydration intake or their electrolyte intake because they're not getting that hydration from fruits and vegetables, or does that affect it?
I think most athletes leading into a race up that anyway. So I don't think you necessarily, because you can still get normal, you kind of, yes, you're taking out some of the high fluid foods, but proportionally to your standard fluid intake, that's relatively small. So I think, yeah, if it's something to keep an eye on for sure. And obviously, depending on what environment you're in, if you're in Hawaii or in Florida, it's, you're going to be chasing your tail all the time anyway from a hydration perspective. I went to Hawaii once to watch the Ironman, and someone said to me flippantly on the way there, on my way there, "Oh, you'll love it so much you'll want to do one." And I went, no, that my body does not cope with that environment, even when I'm not exercising, let alone if I'm exercising. Like, it's just, I'm not designed for that type of environment. So yeah, it's pretty brutal. So I think it depends on those circumstances, but I don't think you specifically have to deliberately go, oh, I need to chase my fluid. I think you need to basically sort of just maintain the focus on adequate hydration leading up to a race.
I saw a couple questions because we do have some athletes that are plant-based. How would they be able to kind of, if they're getting, I'm assuming like chickpeas and beans where they're getting proteins, or
so they'd
not
have
great.
Tofu and tempeh, things that don't tend to have that high fiber content. And I'd be really interested to see how many plant-based athletes actually do reduce their fiber intake leading up to a race anyway, because over time they get more used to it and tolerate. But I wouldn't mind betting that a lot of them change it to a degree anyway, leading up to a race, because of the volume of output that they would normally have is just more difficult to manage. I mean, usually they're going numerous times over the day simply because of their high fiber content. Sorry, I know that's gross stuff to talk about, but I'm a dietitian. It comes with the territory. I could start saying number twos, or however you prefer to phrase things. But yeah, their volume of output tends to be higher anyway, so they probably would be reducing their fiber content to a degree. And again, it's all individual tolerance. So some people will have a really good feel for what their gut's used to and what they can tolerate, and some people it's a more complicated process. And I think I'm going to hazard a guess it's also a little bit gender difference, in that guys tend to have less problems sometimes than females, particularly around the menstrual cycle and things like that. So that may be the other thing to think about for females, that sometimes their menstrual cycle itself and the stage that they are can influence their gut. And so they may need to there may be times, and that can be something that they can track over time, that if they're if they're finding that it's erratic, have a look at whether it's got any relationship with your menstrual cycle as well, because that may be an influence. And so then they may selectively go, okay, for this race, I might need to do something more proactively than for another race, depending on where that falls within their menstrual cycle.
So for plant-based, they can just make different, decisions, like reduce the fiber a little bit to kind of alleviate
I don't think
the
they
gut
need to cut it
issues.
out altogether. I think they can just
Right.
reduce it to a certain degree. Yep.
Okay. And just like any, I guess, if you're a meat eater who eats a lot of fruits and veggies, maybe you just reduce a little bit and see if that alleviates any symptoms. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. If anybody's got any other questions, shout them out. I think Liz is going to be here, but Emily, anything else you want to go over?
I'm loving the amount of pizza comments in the.
No, I think that's great. And I'll put up Liz's contact information if anybody has some specific issues that they want to go over with her individually. She does offer that and could be a good resource. And, and you can also reach out to any of your coaches here at Tower 26 and we can refer you to. So.
Thanks a lot, Liz. Very informative stuff.
No problem.
Thanks for joining. All right, now all the poop talk. On that note, let's go to Gerry. All right, how you doing?
I'm good. How about we get let's get Pooja going here.
Pooja. Oh, I heard something this morning, but Pooja will probably touch on this. I don't want to step on her toes. Go ahead, Pooja.
Hi, everything's looking good. Gerry, I think you saw the data that was published by the CDC about breakthrough COVID infections. So it's actually a lot, and by a lot, I mean I think the percentage that they quoted, so there was 5,800 cases of COVID. So breakthrough COVID cases in people that were vaccinated. So these are people post-vaccination that ended up testing positive for COVID. So that works out to be 0.0078% of those people vaccinated. So there's been 75 million people vaccinated. So, we talked about Pfizer being 95% effective, Moderna being 94% effective. And here you have the actual infection rate for data. After 75 million people were infected, was only 0.0078%, which is amazing. So that's just telling you that these vaccines are performing much better than they thought they would. And they really, really, really are protective. The cases remain low in Los Angeles County. The hospital census remains low. The number of cases is still under 10 at my particular hospital. So things are going really, really well in LA County, and vaccinations. I mean, I think California is one of the leading states in the country for the number of vaccinations that we've provided.
Hey, Pooja, what was the severity, or was there any severity in those 50-something hundred cases?
There's basically mild to moderate symptoms. There was nobody that was hospitalized, or nobody died.
It's amazing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
75 million. Yeah.
Yep.
I still can't get my brother to get vaccinated.
I heard this morning there's zero hospitalizations in LA County since Sunday. Zero.
Wow.
So let's open the pools back up, full time, hour and a half schedule. Gerry, get on the horn. Talk to who you need to talk to about this.
I'm gonna let you take care of that pool that you coach at, buddy. That's your.
I need you to
there.
call. I need you to call Canada. All of our guys in Canada haven't been able to swim for years now. It's frustrating me. What's the deal?
They have a very high infection rate still. Their situation is still quite out of control, I believe.
Well, we need to open Tower 26 pool so these guys can get swimming up there.
Well, we've loaned them some vaccines, so they're getting started, but they're quite a ways behind us.
Yeah.
I guess the Canadians on here can comment, but I haven't been keeping up as much. But I believe that's the situation with Canada.
Canadians are so sweet, they don't make us think. They're like, oh yeah, hey, no big deal. Let's go play some hockey.
That's
all right. So Pam wanted you to go, and we all listen to Pam, right? Whatever Pam says, we do. She wanted you to go over Lucy Charles' race this last weekend. Was it yesterday? When was it?
Yeah,
yesterday? Sometime.
It was. Hold on, someone's calling in. Let me shut that off. Sorry.
Bring them on. The more the merrier.
Yeah, Dan Markey, I don't know if Dan's on the call here with us, but he sent me the link. So I got a chance to watch the race probably about, an hour after it happened.
What was the race? Just
So
tell her.
it was the British Olympic trials and the 1500-meter women's race. And in the final heat was Lucy Charles.
The Olympic trials for swimming, not triathlon.
I'm sorry. Absolutely. Olympic trials for swimming. So Lucy Charles, who was a former, very, very competitive, one of the best distance swimmers for the UK in her day before she became a triathlete. So she decided to race swimming again and go back and race the trials, and had one of the fastest times off of prelims into the finals. So she was in the final heat in, I believe it was lane 2, and she got second overall. So she was the second fastest British woman at the their Olympic trials by literally a couple of tenths of a second. I mean, it was a sprint right down to the finish. Interesting thing was her time was 16 minutes and 46 seconds, which by our standards, triathlon swimming, that is very, very fast. At the elite level, Coach Jack can talk about this. At the elite level, I believe Katie Ledecky's world record is around 15:20 something, 15:30. Jack, am I right? Yeah, you got on mute there.
About 1540, maybe.
I think it's a little long. The fact is that Lucy Charles would have been lapped in that race by Katie Ledecky, which means Ledecky would have finished 1500 meters before Lucy Charles finished 1400 meters. So she would have lapped her. So although she did really well, I would doubt that the British selection committee would send her or the girl that won, because the Olympic qualifications typically work in countries such as the UK and even the US. You have a standard time that you have to be able to make in order to make the Olympic Games. So I believe that standard time, Jack, is somewhere around 16:20 or something like that for the UK, and she went 16:46. But the interesting thing about that race for me was seeing the different stroke mechanics. Lucy Charles, who has now developed obviously into a complete open water athlete because of doing triathlon, really, really high tempo, super high cadence. In fact, her cadence rate was about 90 to 94 strokes a minute for the entire 1500 meters, while the other pool polished swimmers, and those are the ones that they just look pretty when they swim, they've got these nice, long, highly efficient, elegant strokes. They were in the low 70s to 80 strokes a minute range, while Lucy was 92 strokes a minute. And interestingly, Lucy's first 100 was 62 seconds or 102 for 100 meters. So that's about 53, 54 seconds per 100 yards. And the reason, and she was a couple seconds faster than the rest of the field. And I actually liked seeing that, but that comes from her racing triathlon, where you got to get out fast. And so she just went into triathlon race mode, get that first 100 or 200 out quickly. Whereas all the pool swimmers, they're just steady state. Start comfortably and stay there the entire way. She swam 107, 108 per 100 the entire way. And then her last 100 was 104, 100 meters. So again, converting that for us at swim yards, that's about 55, 56 seconds for 100 yards for the last 100. And, maintain that high cadence rate the entire way. She swam 46 strokes per length was her stroke efficiency rate, I guess. So those are sort of the metric numbers. And in fact, I wrote down her splits, her first 500. So 1500, right? 3 500s, 533, 538, and 535. So fairly well clustered, so well paced, out fast, home fast. She's fit. But when you put her at the elite level, I think that time that she did, 16:46, would rank her, I believe I saw this written somewhere, somewhere around 155th or 165th in the world of women's 1500 meter swims. So it's a good time, a very good time for triathlon swimming, but at the elite level in competitive pool racing, 155th in the world.
Now, I would usually ask, could you swim that fast, Gerry? But I'm going to ask, can Deepak swim that fast? Rubbing it in, buddy. Deepak went 20 minutes on our 1500 or 1640 last week. 20 minutes.
It's good. Really good.
Really good.
Deepak and I would be at the 1,200 meter mark while they're finishing their 1,500 meters.
You swim over you, push your head down. Get out of my way.
Oh, by the way, Pam, one of the interesting things about Lucy Charles was her breathing pattern. She has a very unique breathing pattern in the pool. I don't know what it's like in open water. I've seen her race in some triathlons, and because of sighting, she has a different breathing mechanics in open water. But in the pool, she breathed to the right side, then to the right side again, and then so that's 2 strokes, and then she went 4 strokes. So it was 2, 2, 4, 2, 2, 4 the entire way. And you can get away with that when you have a super high cadence rate. Like, in fact, Jack's daughter Eva, that used to race at, I would say, close to 100 strokes a minute, right, Jack? I would guess. I remember watching 100, 100, even 5 strokes a minute. You can afford to not at times have to breathe every 2 strokes because you have such a high efficiency. You don't need to oxygenate at that high rate. So she was 2, 2, 4, 2, 2, 4 the entire way. Well, some of the other girls in the race were every 2 strokes, and there was one girl who was still breathing every 3rd stroke, which I do not think is advisable because her cadence rate was 72 strokes a minute, and she was breathing every 3rd, and I think that's highly inefficient oxygenation. But the physiologist, Jack, you can probably comment more and, you know, put some correction on that.
Oh, no, I agree with you. We played around with all different breathing patterns. We used to do double thirds. So breathe twice on one side, 3 strokes, breathe twice on the other side, which, you know, maybe in like a prelim type of race, do that. But usually for finals, just kind of breathe it well because you want to stay aerobic.
Yep. Yeah, it's sort of interesting to see even in today's world, these athletes still breathing every 3rd stroke, and they have relatively low cadence rates. So I think they'd be much more efficient with a higher frequency of breathing when your stroke rate's that low. When you have a higher stroke rate, you have a little more, few more options.
They all need to read this right there.
That's right.
Get that in their hands. All right, beautiful. Well, thanks for breaking that down, Coach.
Yeah.
All right, Deepak, where you at? Deepak, unmute. So
Hi,
Leslie talked about the humidity and the heat in Florida. Deepak, let's talk about your issue on the run on the virtual race. So this is what I love, Jer, Emily. Yeah. This is why I love doing the practice races. So we have these issues. Deepak is an amazing athlete. The guy swims like the wind. He I think he had the fastest 1640 of anybody in Tower 26 for the race, right? 20 minutes. I think you were the fastest of anybody. He can run, you know, he can run a sub. What's your PR in the 10K? Sub 37, right? He runs fast, super strong cyclist, but he got on the run and he couldn't open up the run because he was getting that cramp under the diaphragm, which is a good place to get the cramp. It's like there's knives stabbing you in the diaphragm. So although he's one of the fastest runners in his division in any race he's going to do, he wouldn't be able to use that because of that pain under the diaphragm. Am I correct, Deepak?
Yeah, I couldn't hold, you know, I usually go like a 6:30 pace coming off the bike, but I couldn't even hold a 7:15, 7-minute pace on the back half of that 10K. It was hurting a lot. And when I came home.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I could see all of the white marks, the sodium, the salt that's just accrued on my body everywhere. So it was definitely electrolyte sodium deplenishing.
Yeah. And we don't realize how much we actually need, especially the more humidity, the more sweating. You think you're taking enough, but most of us have to up that. And the first place that you usually get that cramp is in that diaphragm, especially if you're breathing a ton and, you know, you're putting out a big effort. The muscle that's working the most is going to cramp first. And that's going to be that, you know, those lungs, diaphragm area. So you felt that you have all this energy in your legs and you can't use it because you get this knife stabbing you in the diaphragm. So I want to unmute Pooja here real quick. Pooja, let's bring it back to you. So can we talk a little bit about, just real quick, I don't want you to go into like a whole course on what it's doing here, but why, and Leslie saw this all over her course too, you know, people walking left and right, getting those same cramps because of that sodium, not enough sodium in the system. Couldn't you just tell everybody what the sodium does and why it's so vital to have it as we increase our effort, increase our time under that heat stress?
So sodium and potassium are two of the most critical, what we call electrolytes in your body. And so everybody loses them at different rates. And like Deepak was saying, is that, you know, you could see the crusting on him after his sweat cooled down because he was basically losing all of the salt. And everybody does that at different rates. But sodium is really, really involved in muscular contraction, and it's involved in propagation and how we basically, the nerves tell our muscles to move. And it's basically the shifts of all of these electrolytes. So the more that you lose from your body and you don't replenish, or you replenish with free water, your sodium levels go down and your potassium levels can go down. And that can affect contractility of all of your different muscles, whether it's your diaphragm, whether it's your leg muscles. You know, it basically reduces your ability to fire off those muscles effectively and efficiently. And that's why you can't run. So salt tabs are usually a really good thing because it's very easily absorbed from the gut. And so that a lot of people with long distance or endurance sports use salt tabs to help with that.
Yeah. Great. And that's, you know, you a lot of times you realize before it's too late, as Deepak did, you got to make sure we're doing this from the start. At that more humidity, the more heat that you're going to be performing in, the more you got to head it off at the pass and get it in before you need it. And I'm not worried about our people. I said this on the ride this morning. I'm not worried about you guys taking in too much sodium and having, you know, heart issues because you're taking in too much sodium. You're going to be losing so much sweat. If you were eating cheeseburgers and sitting near your computer all day, then we might have to worry about sodium issues. But if we're going out there competing and you're going to be in St. George next week, if you're racing St. George, it is going to be hot as heck. So all day Friday before the race, you got to be taking in that sodium. Race morning, you got to be taking in, and then you have to stay on those intervals all the way throughout, because once you get behind on it, it's tough to catch back up on it. Gerry, you know a lot about this from all those races you did down in your home country with that hot water. You know, if you don't stay on top of those electrolytes, that just sucks it out of you.
Well, unfortunately, it's which is the case at Ironman at Kona. Athletes don't, you don't fuel or take in enough, or they don't take in anything during the swim. And in shorter swim races, the same thing. Jack would say, it would let you know, certainly in the 10K race, many of the athletes are not doing anything in the 5K race, but in the 10K, they are definitely fueling and making sure they're getting the right amount of, or appropriate amount of electrolytes and nutrients. But when you're in super warm water and it's humid, that's where a lot of is extracted from you.
And a lot of athletes come out of a race, come out of the water like that, and they just feel totally depleted. That's because it's extracting out of you, right?
Well, and also you can't, when the water is so warm, the body is unable to release its heat as much as in cooler water. Is that right, Jack? Am I saying that correctly?
Say that again, Gerry, sorry.
That in super warm water, such as, you had that experience at Abu Dhabi where we lost athletes. One of our national team athletes passed away in a race. I think the water temp was 87 degrees or 89 degrees.
Or 90.
Or 90 degrees. It's a 10K race. So when it's that hot and your body's super hot, what is the body able to actually release its heat? Because your medium is close, real close to your body temperature, right?
Yeah, I think the other problem was the direct heat from the sun. So they were getting a lot of exposure on their exposed surface, and it was hot in the water. So they were wearing technical suits. So there were a lot of factors, but we also had 2 of our female athletes went to the hospital, passed out when they finished.
Right. Your daughter was one of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in super, humid climates and in very warm water. It's challenging. And
possibly dangerous.
Well, obviously dangerous. That's why we've lobbied for, I think there should be in triathlon, water temperature collars above and below certain temperatures. There should be no swim.
Or modify the swim somehow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, get those electrolytes in, guys. Head it off the pass. And if you notice something coming on, you got to just start taking them in there and do the best you can to get it back into the system. You can save a race. I was racing actually Florida 70.3. That's the infamous race where Gerry still makes fun of me. And every time Gerry talks about this race, my swim time gets worse and worse. So my swim time was like 41 minutes. But Gerry tells the story over the years, and it went from 41 minutes to 43 minutes. And now I think we're well over an hour every time he tells the story. But he's Coach Gerry, so whatever he says goes. So even though it's 41 minutes, it may as well have been an hour and a half. Because
you know what we're going to do right now, Jim? You just keep talking. I'm actually going to look it up right now and give you. We're going to see if you remember correctly.
I wrote Ironman and I had him delete that result. But I had a great ride, actually. I rode like 210 or something like that. And then I went to run. And same thing like Deepak was saying, I was ready to rip it. My legs were ready to go. I'm like, okay, I'm going to catch up all that crap swim time. I'm going to catch up and have an amazing run. I get a couple miles in, and it was like someone was taking a knife and just jamming it right into my diaphragm. And, I recognized it. Actually, I didn't recognize it. This is before I took any nutrition in. But I have had it in the past, and you start getting some gels in, and it does subside, but you got to start getting those electrolytes and those carbohydrates in right away when you start to feel it coming on, because you can head it off at the pass, but you got to start getting it in right away. Otherwise, it could be for a long day. Deepak, when that started happening to you, what did you do? Did you just kind of slow it down, or did you get back on those electrolytes, and did it help out and help you finish?
No, I didn't take anything with me. So, off the bike, I just went. I just ran. I didn't take a gel. It's going to be like 40 minutes. I'll be back home. But it was painful.
Yeah.
I regretted that choice.
You don't know. Like coach can tell you till I'm blue in the face, but until you actually experience that feeling, you don't know. You're like, I'll make it through. No big deal. You'll never leave You'll never leave for a run again without at least one gel with you. So
lesson learned.
Listen to Deepak, listen to me, but you guys won't do it. You'll go have your own crappy experience, and then you'll actually learn. And
these guys have to listen to you, Jim. So you obviously have pull within the Ironman ranks, because that race is removed from your profile. But here's what's impressive, you guys, for Jim.
Oh no.
So you're a big dude, 6'3", 6'2", 190 pounds.
Hulking.
Hulking guy. What's amazing, Jim? Here are several of your Ironman run splits: 256, 256, 259, 258, 254. That's some consistent fast running for a big dude.
I think I might be the fastest, biggest guy in the world. Well, I'm like 192 pounds right now.
That's fast running in an Ironman, at the end of the race for a big guy, which
it's all up here.
It's up there, but it's also, to your point, it takes proper nutrition planning, race nutrition planning and execution to be able to actually put that together on event day.
And I'll tell you, I had so many failures, and like that Florida example, it was a perfect example. Like I had so many failures to realize how much I really needed. I mean, when you're 190 pounds and you're in an Ironman, you need 400 calories an hour. And that's a lot of gels. You need like a backpack full of gels. But in order to perform the way I need to perform, that's the amount of calories I need. And everybody's different. I can't tell one person's going to have the same as the other person, but it took a ton of trial and error till I actually figured out how much I actually needed. And it's astounding, Jer, how many people under fuel in these races. I'll be fine with one gel an hour. I'll be fine just going on water. And they don't realize actually what they're capable of if they actually kept that on top of that nutrition.
It would be good to have, I don't know if Liz is still on, but because there are sweat rates that can be measured and replacement amounts that athletes can actually know, correct, Jim? What the amount is.
Yeah, you could do sweat tests. And if you just wanted a roundabout sweat test, Precision Hydration has one online that you could do. I just would assume everybody's high sweat, not nearly as much as me, but everybody's pretty high sweat. But if you wanted to do just a generic sweat test, Precision Hydration has one that you can do on their website. But yeah, and it's interesting to see, and it's interesting to see how much you actually need. Because like we're saying with the electrolytes, one salt tab an hour, but most of us need like 3 salt tabs an hour. And if you're only taking 1, you're going to be majorly underfueled from an electrolyte standpoint.
And you have to take in all the factors. You have to take in the factors of race conditions, individual sweat rates, weight of the person. All those things are to come up with what's right for that particular event that day.
Yeah, totally. All right, Emily, any questions that you want to go over?
I just wanted to say, and I think Liz had to go, but the one thing about, like, we're talking about nutrition and everything, is that you have to be hydrated enough to be able to absorb that nutrition. And that's kind of what Dr. Broad was saying. Like if your gut, if you're dehydrated, all your blood's going to go to your working muscles because those are essential, and absorbing the nutrition that you've just put in your stomach will be considered by your body non-essential. So you need to stay hydrated so you have all this kind of cellular function to be able to continue breaking down that nutrition that you put in your stomach. And that's why we don't eat a pizza on the bike, because that's just too much for your stomach to do while you're asking your muscles to do something else. So just remember that hydration goes along with the nutrition, and you have to stay hydrated, which is why you need stuff with electrolytes, as Pooja was saying, because you need that sodium and potassium so that things are working, I guess. That's very general. I'm not a dietitian, but.
Oh, you act like one. I love it. All right. So, Gerry, so we are in the foundation phase still. When are we making this transfer into the next phase of training for
Well, you know, I wanted to talk to you about that. Typically, we run 4 3-week cycles, and then we start making transition into more of a sharpening phase where we run another few weeks in that phase. But that's on the agenda for you and I to talk about and decide how or when we want to make that transition based on what the season is looking like, the racing season. Races coming online, which, you know, more and more are coming online. So I wanted to coordinate that with you.
Yeah. All right. So we'll chat about that and let everybody in the loop on that. Coach Megan is here too. Let's say hi to her just so we don't ignore her this whole session. She popped on. She's like a ninja over there. Say hi, Meg.
Hello. Happy Tuesday.
Go ahead, say something.
Jim, actually, my brain's fried and my arm hurts, so I was getting the juice. So sorry I was late, but anyhow, Jack and I were talking last week about the importance of the feedback that you have with your coach. So Jack's prepared a couple of quick slides, I think, and he only has a few minutes before he has to jump off to something else. But as we're talking about nutrition, your performance, it really is important to have that feedback loop that's available for the one-on-one athletes and then on the online swim subscription program, so we can help you and we can maybe see some of that and ask you, poke on some of those questions. What was your workout like? What were you eating? Hydration, etc. So turn it over to you, Jack.
Oh, great. Yeah, this I was talking to Megan about this on a phone call. We were both walking. I was walking in the rain in the woods, and she had better weather. But you know, I started the conversation. I was telling her I've been reading a lot about the role of habits in for athletic performance and just for basic health and happiness. And the nice thing in these in the habit research, what they find is that when you develop habits, they help you because it takes the decision process out. You just automatically do it. And generally, if it's a good habit, then that helps you to be more efficient. And I thought about that in relation to the subscription program and the feedback coaching that we do. So I'm just going to share a screen just because I like pictures. And let's see if, I'm wondering if I'm sharing the right screen. Let me try that again. You should see a big swimmer. Do you see a swimmer?
You see 2 swimmers there.
2 swimmers, all right.
Like
Yeah,
a female and a male.
One of them is my daughter. This is from a lot, an open water race. Anyway, I like this saying that what gets measured gets done, and in this case, with this habit, your feedback coach is sort of your accountability partner, and your coach can help you build new habits for your training. So just by writing in on a regular basis, you do especially if you are a remote swimmer, having somebody and making some comments can really help you approach your practice with more presence. It can help you kind of work on your pacing because we can look at your pacing numbers. You can ask quick techniques questions. Helps you to complete sets because if you don't complete the set, you report it and say I didn't complete it, and then we can try to work with you to get that done. And then just get into the habit of recording data. And sometimes bad stuff happens, and I always tell them to still report in. So like this comment here was, I had a good workout, but my watch failed to pick up the data. But, I had some good concentration on my form. You know, usually what I would work on with an athlete in this case is also looking at the clock so that they can still get a general idea of what they had done in that performance. And one thing, if you're on the subscription program, one of the lessons you need to learn is to usually report in with the blue button, because the red one kind of lights up the screen. And that's really like, we're always going to reply if you're just reporting in. If, you know, it's an emergency and you need a really quick reply about something, then you hit that red button. But, you know, I've put in my comments sometimes saying that that's what that button is for. And someone said, oh yeah, I was always wondering what the difference of those two buttons were. So I thought I'd just put that up here. Paces and context are helpful. So here's an example of, you know, somebody who just kind of put in their data, and you'll recognize this set where it's the ladder set, but it's nice because they kind of broke it down. They put their pace per 100, so they're aware of it. I mean, we can do this and look at it ourselves to see how they're doing with their pacing. But if you do it yourself, or if you get that off your watch, then you know that you descended this set, and then you know that you kind of held a constant pace going back up. So putting all that detail in there is useful for you, and it's useful for your feedback coach. Also context, like in this comment, this person told me I'm coming back from 2 weeks of having COVID. I'm better. You know, my shoulders felt it. 25s were all, you know, decent. So that kind of context is good, because otherwise, if he just reported in some times and he was off, you might not know it might take you, and it's very efficient because then you know right off the bat what's going on with that athlete. These dates are off this year, but this is just to say that, you know, the feedback we get might be different at different points in the year. We try to, during the recovery and technical phase, we're really looking for technical feedback, that we try to take the stress off of people getting all their paces. And so sometimes our comments will be, don't worry about the pacing right now. We're really looking at how you're doing with the technical part. But during the foundation, sharpening, and open water skills, we'll like to look at your data and any comments. I mean, and it's good for you just to kind of quickly, and it doesn't have to be a lot of detail. It can be, with these habits, can just be, you know, a few words, but it's good for you to look back and see how you did. It's good for your coach, who's your accountability partner, to see how you're doing. When you get into like the race ready phase, and this is where we'll see, you know, data, comments, and this is the only time I will generally see race reports. I know that Jim is getting some and at this point, but this is usually where the feedback coach might review race reports from the athletes, which again is another version of this feedback, which is helpful to the athlete and also good to get the coach engaged. And so I just thought I'd figure out with that shot again, you know, what gets measured gets done, but also what gets reported gets done. So that's my little spiel on feedback coaching. And it's something I enjoy doing, and I hope it's useful to the athletes on that program.
Hey, Jack, thank you very, very much for doing that. I wasn't aware that you put that together, and it's outstanding. And it's the reason we created that section within our remote program, because, as you know, we talk about the 4 key ingredients to be successful, and that fourth one, and it's not in any particular order, but the way we have it written out is accountability. And reporting in and having that communication system with your coach, that helps you. And we've found athletes who communicate more with their coach stay in the sport longer. They perform better. They have greater enjoyment of the sport, as opposed to being sort of the lone ranger out there. So
that's one of the cool things I've learned from this. You know, it's kind of merging the habit field with the happiness, positive psychology. And, you know, one of the things I find that people with good habits tend to be happier. People that are happier tend to have more success. I mean, you think you're happy because you're successful. It's usually the other way around. You're successful because you're happy. So if we're spreading happiness, I'm happy. So.
Don't you love the comments you ever see, Jim, the comments you get from Megan B? There's always a kiss or a hug or a smiley face at the end of every comment.
I'm going to have to log off because I have a video analysis coming up.
All right, Jack, thank you.
Don't make people happy, Jack. Well, that was great. I mean, that's true for all of our triathletes too. It's all about, you know, staying accountable, getting in the notes, because I can tell by numbers what's going on, but if they're not telling me what's going on upstairs, the numbers only tell me so much. So, and then it keeps them in tune with what they're doing too. Like, just like writing race reports, like the amount that our people learn from writing about their experience going into the next race, because they wrote about it and learned from it, they're that much better athletes. So even if you're not sharing these reports with anybody, just like you're not sharing your workout notes with anybody but your coach, do it. So you learn from all these experiences and you keep bettering yourself, because you're constantly learning about yourself and learning about your execution, learning about your, your plans going in, coming out of, during, all that stuff. So write your notes, guys. Write the notes. Really good, Jack. I love that. I didn't know he was going to do that either. That was a nice spur of the moment.
It's well done. Well put together.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that's our hour. That's all we got. Gerry, any last words from you?
Hey, want to say hi to Kathleen Hughes. I see Kathleen on there. She showed up at one of our workouts. Kathleen, are you able to hear? You can just wave or unmute.
Yes, thank you. Your comments
yeah,
were really helpful. I'm trying to hold my head steady and breathing every stroke.
Good deal.
Kathleen is crushing it on the bike. We just have a big year ahead of us here. And obviously our athletes are already laying it down on course. So we're going to have some fun, guys. Coach Megan, any last words from you?
Yeah, just a quick congratulations to the Gonzalez family with their new addition.
Oh, and the Frankel family,
And
Robbie and Gonzo.
All right.
Emmett and Hayes, they're going to be Ironman world champions. They're going to be vying for the Ironman world champion in about 15 or probably about 21, 22 years, because the age of Ironman are coming down. So Hayes versus Emmett. They were both born within 2 days of each other. Robbie's son and Gonzo's son. So
congrats, guys.
Thank you for the reminder there. And all right, so 3 p.m. Friday, we're going to have our St. George course talk. Be looking for details coming out on that. And everybody's welcome to join. It's going to be some good info regarding execution, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. So look out for details on that. Emily, any last words from you?
No, I think it was a great call.
All right.
Good stuff today.
As it always is. Thanks for putting Dr. Liz on. Guys, thanks a lot. We will see you on the ride tonight. We have a run tomorrow, rides Thursday, and then our talk on Friday. So good stuff. Later, guys.
Have a good one.